Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of In Discussion. Thanks for joining us on this, the third edition of In Discussion now, so we're well into the series. So thank you for joining us wherever you are, whether it's live or obviously a pre-record version as well. I'm Grant Turnbull, I'll be your host for today. I'm the Digital Content Director at Defence Media. We're basically a digital marketing agency and a content agency for the defence and aerospace sector. If you're not familiar with this series, then we basically discuss defence and aerospace topics, especially with a focus on communications and marketing, digital strategies, and even general defence trends. So if you're a professional in these areas, this live stream is for you. So we hope you're going to find it useful. So for this show, as you might have already seen on our LinkedIn, we're going to be talking to Victoria Mackarness. Victoria Mackarness joins us now. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Grant.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. So you're the Senior Account Manager at CMS Strategic. CMS Strategic, if I could get my words out, is a defence communications agency, so specialist defence communications. So you're perfect for this kind of podcast and talking to us about sort of general trends in defence, but also obviously with a marketing perspective on there as well. Thanks for joining us. I know that you've had quite an adventure over the last 24 hours, so it's great that you've actually joined us. What happened? Maybe if you want to tell the audience.
Well, so I managed to fracture my foot yesterday whilst on my state-sanctioned daily stroll. So I'm quite comfortably sitting down for the interview, and there is no fear that I'm going to be getting up and going anywhere.
Amazing. You're stuck with us now for the next 20 or so minutes. Well, no, thank you for joining us. I obviously appreciate that you've been through this incident. But right, so we'll start. I don't know if maybe some of our viewers know who CMS Strategic are. They've got some big clients in defence and aerospace, and they work with them on various campaigns, etc. So yeah, Victoria, maybe it's worth just kind of giving us an introduction into what CMS do for their clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, we're a defence specialised communications agency. So we work with companies sort of all sizes all over the globe. And our main objective is to raise their profile amongst target audiences. So this sort of ranges, but generally includes media, government, armed forces, other stakeholders, as well as sort of other partners within industry.
Yeah. And so what are kind of some of the services that you would provide to your clients? I know that I've seen that you're doing sort of PR, you're doing marketing, but you're also doing things like public affairs as well. I mean, public affairs.
Yeah, so we sort of tend to take the idea that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work in the sort of modern day and age of communications. So we tend to try and bring together all the different facets that you normally, associate with external affairs. So that is sort of traditional PR, but we also work with the marketing managers of our clients, also sort of look at doing, more around that public affairs area, as well as sort of using social media and introductions and building the network of some of the firms and some of their sort of senior leadership.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you do public affairs as well, because for us, we're kind of digital marketing and we're more on the content side of things. So we don't really think about reaching out to government figures as well and having those relationships and interactions. Obviously, we might think about it from kind of a social perspective, but you guys actually get out there and go to Parliament, etc. And you've had experience in the past, haven't you, as well, of politics? So that really kind of speaks to your experience.
Yeah, I think so. So prior to joining CMS, I spent 5 years working in Westminster. So I like to think at least, I have some idea of how it works. And we found that, there are various different ways to approach public affairs, but even on a local level, the thing about the defence industry is obviously they are large employers a lot of the time. And in manufacturing, a lot of that is regional based, highly skilled employment. And as part of that, for example, it's good to be able to engage with the local MP, to look at how to support jobs in the area. But then on a broader perspective, you've got the Defence Select Committee, who are responsible for oversight. And to have an understanding of how they work and to have interaction with them gives us a different avenue, as does then obviously the ministers and that sort of MOD departmental leads is a different way. So the Minister for Defence Procurement obviously is someone that's really good to engage with. And we try to do that across a sort of broad range. So it's not just looking at our clients, but talking to them about the industry sort of as a whole, and particularly because of our line of work, how the MOD can look to support smaller businesses within the industry.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of kind of your mix of PR marketing and public affairs for clients, how does it depend, or would you say that there's a certain mix that you try to approach a certain project with?
I think it depends what the objective of any, campaign is. So each campaign is different. And as I said, you can't really take a one size fits all approach. Some campaigns will be looked at, looking, for example, if it's a contract award, then obviously there'll be an element of making sure that decision makers are aware of the proposition and what you're offering. However, some of it, if it's broader profile raising, will be about speaking more to the media. So rather than sort of having a set way of doing things, we like to work, together to set out an approach that's supported, that the CMS have all agreed on, but also keeping our clients in the loop to make sure everybody's happy with how we're looking at dividing the sort of approach we're taking.
Yeah, I suppose, as you say, it depends a lot on objectives, doesn't it, and what the client's hoping to achieve from a certain project, for instance.
And also, I think, obviously, in the line we do, there are some sensitivities. So some things, just by the nature of them, you can't put into the media. But that doesn't mean you don't want, that you don't want specific decision makers or stakeholders to know.
It's probably worth us bringing up a little thing called COVID and how that's affected clients. Clearly, that's still having an impact, and it's something that can't be ignored. Obviously, we're kind of seeing news now where lockdowns are lifting, and there are some restrictions that are being lifted, whereby maybe people can visit facilities, etc. But it's still been challenging. How have you found it with CMS's clients, and how have CMS adapted to this kind of new normal?
So I think actually the ability of our clients to adapt has been incredibly, a really good testament to them and their abilities. So we've seen that, they've been able to do a huge range of things, but this has gone from delivering trials and demonstrations, which traditionally would always be done in person, to now working out ways of doing all of this, in foreign countries remotely, but also things like building and expanding on existing capabilities, systems, platforms, to then give offerings to government to help them against COVID. So I think the range of things that our clients have been offering and the way that they've been willing to adapt, has been real testament to the sort of strength of the industry and to the strength of our clients. From a CMS perspective, obviously it's been a bit different. We're a small company. We're used to all having a very tight-knit sort of team where we sit in the office and we bounce ideas off each other. But we're still working very closely. So we have a whole team call at least once a day, where we're running through all the work that everybody's on. We're looking across all the accounts and still taking that time every day to make sure we're comparing ideas, sort of bouncing new thoughts off each other and contributing to sort of the debates around the subject. So we're adapting, but doesn't mean I'm not looking forward to getting back to the office.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I suppose everyone's been forced to adapt in whatever way, whether it's just going about daily life or how we work, etc. Obviously, I think one important thing for our sector, at least for aerospace and defence, is the fact that exhibitions and shows have been cancelled, and this has clearly been a big part of CMS. And if anyone knows CMS before, they've probably worked with them at big shows like DSEI, and obviously DSEI has not been affected because it's not in a DSEI year, but other shows have been, the Euros Tours and ELA and some US shows as well, basically shows all over the world. How are your clients, how are they adapting in this kind of environment where they can't go out and they can't physically show people their products, etc., and they can't have those physical meetings?
So, I mean, we've certainly felt the impact of losing, the really valuable platform that trade shows provide. And I think the general consensus, both at CMS and amongst our clients and other stakeholders, is that we're all very much looking forward to getting back to the exhibitions next year, as you said, with it being a DSEI year. But, in the meantime, we have been finding new ways to promote sort of equipment and new systems, platforms, and general messaging. So, this has been everything from doing live interviews like this, but, and our clients have been doing series with Shepherd, and Jane's sort of live things like that. But we're also looking at sort of contributing more to the thought leadership area. So our clients are now contributing to sort of other discussions that are going on. They're sitting on panel sessions, sort of investing more in blogs and sort of taking the time to promote their own ideas and thought leadership, but largely through social media. And I think there's the online content production, as we've seen, from other clients, but across the industry, online content production has gone up enormously as people are looking to keep those conversations that would be happening in person, to keep them going virtually.
Yeah, I suppose there's still challenges in that respect. I mean, I would agree with you wholeheartedly in that respect. I mean, obviously, it's what we do. So obviously, I would agree it's a slightly vested interest, but it is digital now, and although obviously there are still some offline options, I think what obviously this crisis has shown is that they oftentimes don't work, especially if you can't actually physically get them. And so social media and online media has kind of stepped in that respect, hasn't it? There are still some challenges, and one person that I spoke to recently in a major UK company had issues with classification, and they would love to be able to talk more about products with people on a more kind of classified, on a higher security level, but obviously because of communication channels at the minute, that's just not possible. So I guess that's going to be a real incentive for companies to get back to international meetings and international exhibitions.
Yeah, certainly. I think there is a huge value to be gained in being able to communicate like this, and I actually think this method of communication is going to stay very central to how we do work in the future, even once we are able to sort of travel and meet each other again. But I do also think nothing can replace that face-to-face contact, particularly when you think about, in the industry, the level of confidentiality and sensitivities, as well as actually the sort of ability to meet people who trade shows and things like that give an amazing ability to meet people you otherwise wouldn't be able to. And so I think for broadening people's horizons and their network as well, for that another reason why people are really looking forward to getting back is sort of into the real world, so to speak.
But I suppose we should clarify this with a big but, as in there's going to be a lot of changes that have to take place, isn't there? And as we're seeing it now, we heard this week that DVD, the Land Forces show, will take place, or is expected to take place in November, and it looks like other shows might go ahead as well. But there's going to have to be a lot of measures put in place to ensure visitor safety and not only visitor safety but visitor confidence. What would you see as the main ways that exhibition organisers can ensure that confidence in health and safety practices?
Well, I think the obvious point to make is that obviously exhibitions, as much as we think of them as something big for the defence industry, are held in every industry. And these are not done in isolation. So you look at, for example, DSEI, they are an enormous, Clarion Events are an enormous organiser of all sorts of shows and exhibitions. They are part of then a broader network of people that run shows and exhibitions who are all working collectively to find a solution. They're working with each other, they're working with government. So this is not about our industry having to try and find a way by themselves. It's about there is a movement for everybody who works along those lines to work, I said, with each other and with government to make sure that they can do this, in the most sort of safe way possible, whether this is enhanced hygiene, social distancing, travel restrictions. There's a real movement to make sure that A, it does come back, but B, that they do come back safely.
Yeah, it's a great point that the economic factor in just the events industry is huge, and there's billions of pounds that's spent each year, not just in obviously aerospace and defence, but other sectors, just for getting people together. So I guess we can maybe expect events to come back in a more compact capacity, maybe smaller, maybe more regional. Is that something that you might expect in the future?
to be honest, at this point, I wouldn't want to take a guess. I think the situation is fluctuating so quickly, and so much is still up in the air. But yes, I think in the short term we can look at things maybe being smaller, but how this will be, by DSEI next year, there's over a year until sort of that the really big shows are back. So I think there's very much a wait and see, and that we know that they'll be working to ensure that they can provide the best possible job and the safest environment to do it. So rather than speculate, to be honest, I'd rather just sort of leave them to it, and I look forward to seeing what they decide.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, I'm just gonna check our live stream and see what is. Let me have a look. Again, the weekly problem that I have is trying to juggle technology and speaking at the same time. We have got viewers, so if anyone wants to ask a question to Victoria, is interested in marketing objectives, PR, any kind of public affairs that you're maybe interested in asking, any objectives that you might have over the next few months, that we can maybe give you some advice on, then please ask away. If not, we're always available for a chat afterwards as well, so feel free to get in touch. Now, no one's biting just yet, I don't think, but we'll keep an eye on that. Let me get back to here. Okay, so let's talk maybe a little bit more about just defence trends in general, because I think that obviously so much of what we do as marketing and communications professionals is linked to what happens in defence more general. Clearly for aerospace and civil aerospace, that is really going to struggle for the next few years. And I suppose there are some people out there who have aerospace clients, and that's going to be an issue. Maybe not for this discussion, but let's look at defence. At the minute, it seems as though many defence companies have weathered the storm of COVID and have even contributed to fighting COVID through equipment, etc., that they've been able to manufacture. But it's not all rosy, is it, for defence? And defence could take a hit over the next few months, if not years, especially if the UK, as the OECD kind of set out, it might be the worst affected country in the developed economies. So, what is your prediction, Victoria, for defence going forward?
Well, so I think in the short term, as you said, people seem to have been shored up relatively well. I think in terms of the manufacturing capabilities, the defence industry has been very good and very efficient at ensuring they can reopen sort of their factories and any of the manufacturing centres with appropriate social distancing, and so we're able to carry on providing those systems and platforms, for their customers. I do think, obviously, the thing that's hanging over all of us at the moment is, of course, the integrated review. So that was due to be published. Well,
I mean, that's obviously the UK. We have international people, but in the UK, we're looking now at the next defence review. We have them every 5 years. And obviously each year it's an assessment of the UK's place in the world and what kind of capabilities and technology it might need to then meet those kind of objectives and in its place in the world. So the next step is the integrated defence review. What can we expect from that? Because that's clearly now just being delayed potentially indefinitely at the minute.
So I think, there's a lot that we can expect from it. I think it's interesting, even just in its naming, that they've moved away from the Defence and Security Review to Integrated Defence, Security and Foreign Policy. So, it looks like a sort of much bigger, broader view is being taken in terms of how they're now approaching our defence and security planning. But I think there have been some very interesting things to come out recently. So I think it was just this week they've announced the launch of a dedicated cyber regiment, which will be there to sort of combat hostile digital attacks. And we sort of just through the work with our clients and the general chatter, there's an obvious sort of move towards more autonomous systems and platforms We also look at the sort of threat from UAVs. And so as technology is changing, I think the integrated review has a lot to look at, because although the technology is becoming more advanced with some sort of hostile state actors, that doesn't change the fact that some other, in some other countries where we're still deployed, the technology is not that advanced. And it is still very much sort of man on man. You're looking at sort of, 80s Soviet sort of provided equipment. And so while we need to look at how we are combating sort of the threats of the future, we can't do that at the risk of ignoring the less advanced threats that we still face.
Yeah, and I suppose as well with that, and we're obviously looking there at the threats, we're going to also look at maybe the defence industrial base as well, and that seems to be a conversation that's been quite prevalent over the last not just months but years now, where the steady erosion of the UK defence industrial base, and I guess that not only obviously has an impact just for defence in general, but it has an impact for defence companies and defence companies that are maybe UK based as well. Is it something that you're seeing with your UK clients, that they really want to kind of focus on their industrial presence and strategies as well?
I mean, I think the main focus of our clients at the moment and in the long term is ensuring that they are providing the most cutting edge equipment, systems, platforms to the UK customer. Now, how they do that obviously differs from client to client, but I think there is, a big push on ensuring that it is locally sourced sort of equipment, jobs, manufacturing, to provide that sort of freedom of action to the UK customer, ensuring that everything is done as much within the UK as possible. And obviously sometimes external technology exists, but it's about bringing it into the UK and adapting it for the UK's needs here within the UK, to keep it very much focused around that, and looking, as you said, sort of looking after the base here. Just something else I wanted to pick up that I think is sort of interesting.
Sure. Go ahead.
Talking about this is obviously we have there's the 2% of GDP is we were talking about finances earlier, and just the ramifications of COVID on the potential ramifications of GDP drops in light of COVID, I think will be a really interesting challenge to the government, looking at incorporating both all these future technologies and costs that come with them in potentially a reduced spending environment.
I suppose that's going to be one of the issues, isn't it, that when or if GDP growth falls, there'll be calls for defence to be cut as well, and spending to be cut to keep in line with 2%. But that again, that's hard from a messaging perspective, to try and say, no, we need to keep spending on defence, because I as guests before have said, defence, as much as we love it as a subject and a place where we work, etc. A lot of people don't really see defence as that, and they see it as a spend that could be spent elsewhere, as hospital beds, for instance. So that again, that's also messaging, isn't it? To say this is really important for the UK, for wider security, etc. Is that something that you still see as a challenge?
Absolutely. I mean, as a challenge, I think there are plenty of people who do understand the value that defence brings, both sort of in an industrial sense, but also in terms of keeping our sort of service personnel, but also actually the UK, keeping them safe. And I think COVID, in some respects, having seen the work of the armed forces to support the UK government mission, we had Nick Carter obviously addressing the nation from inside Number 10. So I think the ability of the armed forces to adapt and support the UK in almost any requirement has been a great thing that the public may have seen that otherwise wasn't so sort of widely acknowledged. But also when it comes down to sort of platforms and systems, some of it is essential, and it's not possible to delay some of these things because there isn't the money, without leaving ourselves vulnerable.
Yeah, I guess that will have to be managed quite closely in the future. Victoria, I think we are at the end of our questions and at the end of our stream. I'm just going to have a look, see if we have got any questions. We do, from John Cottrell. He says, great show. What does Victoria find most interesting about defence comms? Thanks.
Thanks, John. What do I think is the variety. I think what is so much fun about this job, and CMS, I have to say, has a big part to play in this because it's a great place to work. But I think the fact is you never have any idea really what is coming up on any given day. You know, you have lovely plans and there's always things that need to be done. But the industry as a whole moves so quickly that there are always new and exciting things you have to learn about, have to act on. I think I'd only been in the defence industry for 6 months when we did the PR for, when we were at DSEI with all of our clients, as well as doing the PR for the show. And there's so many things you have to do at once. And for somebody with a sort of low boredom threshold, I think that this industry is absolutely great for it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Low boredom threshold and a low attention span for me. That's what excites me. So anyway, well, thank you very much for that question, John. We really appreciate it. I think on that, we don't have any more questions for today. But again, as I say, if you do have any follow-ups for either myself at Defence Media or for Victoria at CMS, then get in touch and we'll be able to forward all the details. So Victoria, thank you very much. It's been an excellent half an hour, great insight into everything that CMS does and what you do with your clients and defence in general. So very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grant. Bye.
You. So thanks everyone for tuning in to episode 3 of Defence Media's In Discussion. We hope you enjoyed this. I'll try and get my words out more clearly next time. If you want to get in touch with me, just go on my LinkedIn and search for Grant Turnbull. We'll have a pre-record of this and we'll hopefully have an audio version as well. And we hope to see you for the next episode soon.